I'm Eve Lohr, and my Distinguished Scholars Language Arts capstone is titled Changing Perspectives, an analysis of film adaptations of novels. I've always been interested in both books and movies, but I was inspired to explore the connection between them for my capstone project the summer before my senior year. My favorite graphic novel series, Paper Girls, was adapted into a TV series that was released that summer. Unlike other movies or TV shows based on books that I'd seen previously, notably The Hunger Games and Harry Potter, Paper Girls did not stick to the plot of the graphic novels. The setup and characters were the same, but the plot deviated quickly, and few scenes from the graphic novels were included in the adaptation. Despite this deviation, I really enjoyed the series and thought it did a great job of representing the graphic novels. But this show made me ask myself, why were those changes made? What makes a book adaptation good? To prepare for this project, I conducted preliminary research on the process of movie adaptations. I learned that a massive shift occurred in Hollywood since the release of highly successful adaptations like Twilight and Harry Potter, and more films are being based on pre-existing materials. Book adaptations have taken over our screens today. I also just Googled what makes a book adaptation good. I read various opinions, but the professors, movie critics, and book bloggers seemed to agree that a balance had to be struck between remaining true to the source material and giving it new life on screen. Abandoning what readers love most about the novel is a sure way to lose viewership, but producing a play-by-play of the novel isn't an answer either. I then read adaptations, from short story to big screen, by Stephanie Harrison. While most adaptations have to cut portions, as there's no way to fit 400 pages into a singular film, the short stories and adaptations were used as framework for movies, and more was added onto it. This gave me a different perspective on inspiration and story in adaptations. During this research project, I began to ask different questions, like how books are adapted to appeal to a larger audience, and the eventual focus of my project, how the visual format of movies can tell a story differently. The next stage of my project was to compare books to their on-screen adaptations. The first book I read was Little Women. The novel has received several adaptations over the years, but I chose to watch Greta Gerwig's 2019 film as it received great critical acclaim, and I have been looking forward to watching it for a while. Unlike the novel, the movie is not told chronologically. The novel was originally published in 2 parts and has 2 main arcs. The movie's main plot follows the second arc, but scenes from their childhood are interspersed throughout as flashbacks, and these often parallel scenes that are happening in the present. But the most meaningful and my favorite part of the movie was the end. In the novel, Jo enters into a domestic life with Professor Bear, which is controversial among readers. Many wish she would have married her best friend Laurie, or simply remained independent as she had remained adamant about the entire novel. The movie doesn't change the ending, rather leaves it up to interpretation. I decided to do Jaws, as it was an extremely successful movie that was based on a relatively unknown book. And to my surprise, I enjoyed the book more than the movie. The 1975 film served its purpose as a blockbuster thriller, but it did not delve into the themes of class, media influence, and loss that were covered in the novel. By focusing more on the external threat of the shark, the story was made more appealing to a wider audience. Viewers came to the theater to see a film about shark attacks, not how the attacks affected a town entirely dependent on tourism. But the biggest change was keeping scientist Hooper alive. In the novel, protagonist Brody's wife cheats on him with Hooper, but when this plot line is removed in the movie, there's no reason to kill Hooper anymore. Jurassic Park is in a similar genre and was also adapted fairly closely. The movie obviously did not go into as much detail as the 450-page novel, but all the major plot points and characters were brought over into the film. However, several character deaths were removed from the film adaptation. Ian Malcolm lives, though he suffers a slow death from injury in the novel. Malcolm's likely kept alive to play a role in the sequel. In the film, Hammond, the man behind Jurassic Park, lives and is characterized as a harmless grandfather who merely went a little too far in making his grandchildren happy. However, in the novel, Hammond shows no remorse for his actions. The poetic irony of Hammond's death at the hands of his own creation was not included in the movie. I next watched A Wrinkle in Time, which I will not glorify by spending too much time on it. Despite the stunning graphics, A-list casting, and hundreds of millions of dollars sunk into the film, it was a box office flop. There were a multitude of reasons. Celebrity casting as the mistresses made it difficult to see them as characters, especially since they just acted like themselves on screen. Interactions between characters were not consistent or believable. Despite the mature themes that the original novel covered, the film comes off as gaudy and childish and does not preserve the essence or the energy of the original novel. Nella Larsen's passing, at 95 pages, is more of a novella. Because of its length, the Netflix adaptation cuts very little and events occur very similarly to how they did in the book. But the truly genius part of the movie is how it uses sound and camera angles to convey mood and emotion. The novella is in third person limited and focuses heavily on the inner thoughts of the protagonist, Irene. Because of this, the filmmakers had to find a different way to convey her thoughts to the audience. A lot of the tone and mood is established by the soundtrack, often a lone piano. Also, when Irene is feeling overwhelmed, the audience can tell by the muffled voices. Camera angles play a big role. Most shots were either from behind Irene's head or focus in on her facial expressions, which allows the audience to see through her eyes and focus onto how she's feeling and reacting. I thought this was so much better and so much more creative than just using a voiceover. And for a movie about color, I thought filming the whole thing in black and white was brilliant. For my final product, I read The Poppy Boar by R.F. Kuang and reflected on how I would adapt Rin's story for the big screen. The book is in third person limited, and Rin spends much of the book reflecting on what's happening around her, rarely truly expressing herself. Therefore, I would need to find a different way, like passing, to tell the viewer how she's feeling. Many adaptations use first-person narration to share the inner thoughts of the character. This often comes off as childish and a little on the nose to me, which I don't feel fits the tone that Kuang set. For this product, I would likely use techniques like passing to tell Rin's story. When more reflection is needed, I would use letters to share her perspective. Her only true confidant for the first part of the book is her tutor. And although she sends him no letters in the book, I think including letters to him in the movie would work well within the established character relationship and provide a mechanism for telling Rin's story. As a fantasy novel, the movie would have to find a way to share the world building. A movie cannot share information outside the story like a book, so most of this would have to come through dialogue. I think I would adapt the novel fairly closely and focus on emphasizing the world building and bringing the characters to life, making changes when necessary to tell the story better. I'm grateful I was able to explore my passions and invest in a project that kept me engaged all year. This project has taught me that there are different ways to tell every story, and I've enjoyed exploring these perspectives. I've grown better at dissecting plot mechanisms and characterizations, and I find myself thinking about the why every time I read a book or watch a movie.